Hello and welcome back to Tracking Trends. We are back to talk about America again and Donald Trump again. Last week, the US President announced a 90-day pause on the reciprocal tariffs, except for China, where he has gone ahead and more than doubled the tariffs that he had imposed earlier. Now, China faces a 245% tariff on everything that it exports to the United States. Today, we had planned to talk about what is going to happen in these 90 days. Does Trump really have a plan for these 90 days? But before that, there are lots of things that have happened in the last 24 hours. Before we get into what lies ahead in the 90 days for which Trump has paused his tariffs, let's take a look at what happened overnight. Overnight, the government of California, the largest state in the United States of America, and its governor, Gavin Newsom, they filed a lawsuit challenging Trump's tariffs, terming them as illegal and unconstitutional. Around the same time, the US Fed chief, Jerome Powell, was speaking at the Economic Club of Chicago, where he warned that the tariffs were going to push up inflation further and slow growth. And that wasn't taken kindly by the stock markets, which sharply fell by almost 1.5 to 2 or 3%. Today, Trump has begun his day threatening that he's going to fire Jerome Powell. So interesting times ahead, and I have Indrani Bagchi joining me today to talk about all this and more. Indrani Bagchi is the chief executive. Sorry, something is going wrong. Today, I have Indrani Bagchi joining me to talk about what is happening in the United States and more. Indrani is the chief executive of the Ananta Centre. It's a New Delhi-based foreign policy think tank, rather a premier foreign policy think tank of the country. And she's just back from Washington. So Indrani, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Rajesh.
Let's go backward. Let's take the latest. So Trump now wants to fire Jerome Powell. What do you make of it?
I don't think Trump can actually do that. There is, I think, a law in the US that prevents presidents or the executive from being able to fire the Fed. And I think if you are talking of what's happening recently, I saw the Treasury Secretary, the US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, has just warned the White House that quite openly that trying to fire Trump would roil the markets even further than it already is. And as you have seen, the markets have taken quite a dive in the last few days and sort of almost refusing to come back up.
The markets have opened today as well. A few minutes ago, I checked, Dow Jones was down 1.3%. Dow Jones went down 1.7% yesterday. The Nasdaq Composite Index was down 3%. I haven't checked about it today. It must also be down. Now, you said the law doesn't permit Trump to fire the Fed chief. But then Trump is a person who makes his own laws. And that brings us to the other thing that happened overnight, where the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, and his government filed a lawsuit saying these tariffs are illegal because the Constitution doesn't allow the president to impose these tariffs by invoking emergency measures. They can only be done when they are routed through the Congress, which is what Trump hasn't done. How do you see the implication of the California lawsuit?
Well, please understand that Gavin Newsom is, this is not just a mere lawsuit against the presidential use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or I think it's called IEEPA, which is a 1977 law. But I don't think this is a very just a simple sort of suit against the president's executive authority or executive action. Please understand that Gavin Newsom is also understood to be pitching to be the Democrat candidate for 2020 for the 2028 campaign, and when you see the political atmosphere, there are very strong overtones of politics as well. So I think politics cannot be too far away when the governor of a state like California, which I think is contributes to about 14 or 15% of the U.S. economy, fires a suit against the president of the United States.
It's got 40 million people living in California. Its GDP is higher than most countries around the world, except for Japan, China, and Germany. So there is politics in it. And as you said, Newsom is a front runner to be the Democrats' presidential candidate in 2028. But do you think there is merit in this lawsuit that they have filed? Because they specifically say the IEEPA, if we may say, it really doesn't even talk about tariffs that can be part of emergency measures.
So the thing is, if I understood it right, it is emergency powers that the president uses, which gives him very wide authorization. And just because they haven't been used for tariffs before doesn't mean they can't be used for tariffs now. Tariffs are another way of describing sanctions, and they have been used to impose sanctions for many years. So it's not like they haven't been used. I mean, you can narrate a set of tariffs differently. Because look at it. I mean, 245% tariffs, as you just said, on China. It's almost like sanctioning China.
Yeah.
So if that is allowed by the IEPA, tariffs, I mean, as a clever lawyer can argue that tariffs are also covered by the IEPA.
Yeah, so the ball is in the court's
In
court.
the court. Huh.
In the court's
But
court.
I don't know if you saw this. There was a recent video of the president with meeting all the governors of the different states, and he called out. I think it was the governor of Maine, and asking her whether she would follow his instructions, and she said, "I will only follow state laws and federal laws." And he said, "Well, you will not get federal funding if you don't listen to me." And she said, "Okay, we'll see you in court." So this is now a regular affair, and it goes across sectors, not just. So yes. I mean, see, there is a. It's. I think we also need to understand that there is a very serious polarization in the U.S. Political polarization, cultural polarization, ideological polarization. This is an ideological administration, and therefore, what you are seeing is part of the pushback against an ideological administration.
Now, tell me something. Do you think other Democrat-ruled states may follow suit, may follow in the footsteps of California?
None of them have the kind of sort of overwhelmingly Democrat population that California has. Second, none of them are remotely as rich as California. I think the only comparable state is Texas, which is very definitely a Republican state and would never file any such case against Trump. But if you have to look at people filing lawsuits against Trump, look at Harvard University in a different part of the country. which has also filed a case against Trump because Trump wants to regulate academics, regulate tuition, and regulate who they take in as international students.
Is he opening up too many fronts?
One would say so. One could definitely say so, and I think that may have been one of the sort of one of the reasons why Trump actually was compelled to pull back on the tariffs. I mean, people said it was about the bond markets, the bond yields rising, but it was opening up a number of fronts, particularly with allies and with partners. Those, but to be fair to Trump, Trump is very clear. He knows what he's doing. He knows that he is he's also clear that he wants to continue doing it and that he's not going to take a back seat. I mean, retreat in any imaginable way. So, in a sense, what you said at the beginning still holds true is we really have to look at and wait and watch to see what the end of these 90 days brings.
So that brings me to the question. You said he knows what he's doing, that there may be a method to his madness.
Well, I think he thinks he knows what he's doing.
There may be some order that he may be seeking in this chaos. But I'm still going to ask that question. Does he really have an end game?
Well, it's hard to see an end game at this stage of the game. I would point to I think one of the things that he's trying to do certainly is to reshape the nature of the American economy. How he's going about it, I mean, you can see the devastation around you. But I think that is where he comes from. Doesn't seem to me that he thinks some amount of creative destruction is probably called for. We are at the beginning of that stage of creative destruction. Whether we can see the destruction, we just don't know what comes after, or whether what he wants to construct after is what we don't know. We only can go by his speeches and his campaign remarks, where he said that he wants to bring manufacturing home, he wants to correct a trade imbalance, has this sense of very strong sense of grievance, it wants to end wars because he thinks that America is just walking around killing its own people, fighting wars, spending money for no reason at all, for problems that don't belong to America. In a way, he is back to an old isolationist America, which we saw back in the 20s, in the 1920s, not in that sense that America can be an island and can be isolated and can flourish in this isolated state. That seems to be something that he's quite taken with.
What's going to happen in the 90 days that the tariffs have been paused?
Well, see, I read a story where the US is working on completing trade deals, primarily with four big countries. That is Japan, Korea, India, and Vietnam. And I'm not sure whether we'll get it done in 90 days. If you remember the February 13 joint statement between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump, I think they said that the first tranche of a bilateral trade agreement between the US and India would be ready by the fall of 2025. And that's around the time President Trump is.
September.
Sorry, yeah. Well, that's around the time that President Trump is supposed to visit India for the Quad summit. But Japan is their closest treaty ally. So is Korea, and so is Vietnam. Uh, I'd say that that's what we read, that this was these they were negotiating deals with these four countries. Now, whether they do this in 90 days or whether that gets an extension, we have no idea. We honestly, nobody has an idea.
So now Trump also said that there are more than 70 countries who are very keen to have these trade deals. But beyond that, we haven't seen anything, we haven't heard anything.
Negotiations generally don't happen in public. I mean, you look at the Japanese negotiation, the Japanese chief negotiator spent 50 minutes with Trump personally behind closed doors and 75 minutes with the negotiating team. So clearly, they understand that in the Trump world, they negotiate at the top level. They don't
Yeah.
negotiate bottom up, which is very different where China is concerned. China negotiates bottom up, and China is also making noises that, if you are respectful to me and if you don't sort of say horrible things about China, then and if you stay away from Taiwan, we can start working on a deal. And but we don't see anything beyond that.
Mhm. Now, with the developments that have happened after he paused tariffs, things
Yeah,
like the lawsuit in California, things like the backlash from Harvard, and the
mm,
Harvard alumni is a very powerful group, probably the most powerful group in the United States, both in
sure.
politics and economy and business. And the chaos around other things. Do you think all these countries that Trump is trying to now hammer out a deal, they might have gotten a little bit of upper hand. They might be encouraged to harden their stance. For instance, India was talking about zero for zero tariff initially, but not now after Trump chose to pause tariff because that's taken as Trump has somewhat blinked. That's how many people see it.
Well, in a sense, Trump has blinked. But uh, I don't know if any serious government thinks that this is not no longer, I mean, that the pressure is off them, and that they need not go ahead with the negotiations. I think there is very serious negotiations going on both sides, certainly for India. Um, a trade deal between an India and an America is never going to be easy. A trade deal where we are we are literally one of the highest tariff nations in the world. We are so protectionist. To actually encounter an America that is equally protectionist, it has been a bit of a culture shock in India. And so the zero for zero basically means that I will reciprocate whatever you have. So not everything in America is zero. And are you willing to give so many things that are there is that tussle going on within India as well. It's not merely the large industries or the large sectors like automotives or textiles that would be impacted. There would be small farmers impacted, there would be dairy that would be impacted. And the for Indian industry too, um, this is an inflection point.
Mhm.
And I think the government has been quite vocal in telling them that you need to be a lot more competitive and you need to be not be afraid of competition. I think it works both ways. I mean, the government too has imposed this government has imposed more tariffs than previous governments.
Yeah.
So it's not like government is suddenly has always been pro competition, etc. They're also getting into these negotiations because they're also, I mean, this is no longer an option. This kind of piling tariffs on tariffs and protecting domestic industry. It's not working. So whatever works, I mean, whatever happens, we will not escape the turbulence of the transition.
So you mentioned four countries that the US is very seriously looking at uh, in terms of clinching a trade deal: India, Japan, South Korea, and Vietnam. Uh, we know that Japan, Vietnam, and South Korea are also talking to China, or at least being talked to by China. There are simultaneous talks happening there. Are we talking to China also, or
No,
should we
I
be
mean,
talking to China?
but I don't know if you noticed, but China's. I mean, we are. See, you must understand. I think we need to that we are in a world where trade is no longer just trade. Trade is tied up with security because the world is different. Japan may be talking to China, and remember, Japan has thousands of um, companies and factories and manufacturing facilities and designing facilities and assembly facilities in China. They are the biggest source of semiconductor component exports to China. So Japan hurts in a very different way. Yet Japan also knows that its biggest strategic adversary is China. In a sense, Japan has to make that choice. And Trump is pushing them to make that choice. And that choice will be very tough for Japan. Very tough. You can see, I mean, the prime minister's uh, prime minister, the Japanese prime minister Ishiba has been holding cabinet meetings every day because they are struggling. They don't. Same with Korea. Remember, Korea is equally dependent on America for its security. America just the other day removed the theater high altitude the THAAD missile interceptors. South Korea's worry is twofold, threefold: North Korea, China, and Japan. So, not like anybody, when they are saying that, oh, yeah, America doesn't really work for us anymore, let's go to the Chinese. That's not going to happen because there are other, and the same for India. I mean, I don't know if you noticed, but Chinese FMCG companies are slowly coming around to the view that it may be better for them to take minority stakes in joint ventures in India. That's just something Chinese companies had not agreed to so far. Um, Now they are sort of exploring that idea.
Yeah.
So the tariffs will impact people in different ways. We cannot say that we will not be impacted. We will be impacted quite heavily.
Mhm. So where do you think things stand vis-a-vis India?
Look, we are we are not a problem country for Trump, for the US. Forget Trump. For
Politically speaking.
huh? We are not a problem country. The problem, we have more or less converging interests with America, and I'm not saying with Trump, but with America. We look at China in almost a similar way as a strategic adversary. So we are actually much more familiar and much closer than many people realize. But we are not a treaty ally. We will never be one. We are not under American security umbrella. We will never be one. And we follow our own interests, mm, despite America. And we have seen that very recently in the last 4 years, the amount of pressure that India has been under to stop imports of Russian oil, or to give up its relationship with Russia. So India hasn't bent. And I think that kind of creative diplomacy is underway. But basically, we are not very different from each other. Where is the problem? The problem area is trade. This is the problem area.
Mm.
And this you could say that the Indian government should have acted, and I believe they could have acted earlier, um, not to reduce tariffs, but to make Indian industry a lot more competitive, a lot more able to face competition.
Yeah. Yeah, so as you said, we should follow our interest despite America, and that's what we have done. Uh, and in the 90 days that we are talking about, everybody is uh, speculating as to what Trump would be doing. But at the same time, we should also be clear about how we can make the most of these 90 days, which also could involve uh, filling the gaps, in the homework that we need to do as and
Yeah,
when we come to the negotiating table.
yeah.
That
So you see, we are not a big manufacturing. We are not a great manufacturing nation. Uh, what we are a lot more in the technology, in uh, strategic sectors like fintech and data, etc. There are these areas which will prove to be a bit of a difficult.
So, would it be fair to say the kind of anxiety that prevailed, let's say, 90 days uh, ago, are have subsided to some extent for Indian businesses?
No, the anxieties have not subsided. I think where I think there has been a sense of um, resignation that yes, these tariffs will come, whether they come today or tomorrow, unless we find a way around it, or unless Trump walks back so spectacularly that we go back to status quo and ante. But short of that, I think everybody understands that changes are coming, and those we you have to prepare for those changes.
The other big concerns for people in India is what's happening on the immigration front. We have heard news about some very unfair deportation of Indian students that have happened. Some have gone to court and gotten a stay. Uh, is that going to kind of, is the scale of that going to get bigger in days to come? Should we worry about it?
I think it will get bigger.
It'll get
I
bigger.
think it will get bigger because um, see, there are a couple of things to this. One is you the people that are being targeted currently are people who've had minor offenses, have resolved them, but they've all have something in common, is they've been supporting Hamas or supporting Palestine, etc. I think if you put an Indian context to it, remember the years in which people you would be targeted for being if let's say if you were supporting Lashkar-e-Toiba, for instance, what would that do to you?
Mhm.
And I think yes, most certainly that these things are unfair, and they certainly feel unfair from India, because I mean, you can't be going after students like this, and it impacts students in from India who are top paying students. Remember, most Indians are paying students. Indians have the largest number of students in America, legal, more like 99% are legal. And not just immigrants, but also students. I mean, immigrants are one thing. Immigration is a sovereign right, and that's you can't take that away. But students are being impacted. Even H-1B holders are being impacted. Green card holders are being impacted. The notion that is spreading is foreigners will be welcome only under certain conditions.
Mhm. So, when as we negotiate a trade deal, and assuming that there is a more conducive environment that would kind of follow in these 90 days, uh, you think, is there a scope for India to tie it up with also certain getting certain other things from the US side in terms of a little more security for the many service professionals who are employed in the United States, uh, the Indian student community? Is there a way, channel through which you can work that out? Is there a role that the government can play proactively?
I don't know, Rajesh, because I see, I heard, I can't remember who it was. I think somebody from the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council saying that. I mean, I read a remark by him to say, and I cannot remember who it was, to say that we Indian students are paying students, and that is an economic value, has an economic value. So should we give an economic value to the, say, 100,000 or 500,000 students, Indian students that are in America? The fees that they pay, should that be considered an investment in America,
Mhm.
and that be used to defray tariffs? So I don't know how that negotiations going to go. I've just this was just something that I read, but I don't know how that's going to go. But yes, I mean, it's not, Indians are remarkably creative when it comes to trade negotiations.
Mhm.
My sense is this time, in a way, I think the government is also looking at it as an opportunity. And I think many economists have actually made that point, that it's an opportunity for India to clean up its act, and use this. I think somebody's even called it another 1991 moment.
Mhm.
Um, but honestly, I don't know.
Yeah. So as they say it in Hindi, "Afta mein absar," seize the opportunity that you see in the adversity. Let's hope that happens. Thank you very much, Indrani, for taking time out and joining us. I think we covered a lot of ground, and your insights are always helpful.